Well, hello there. Let's talk about presidential pardons. You know, that superpower the President of the United States has. It's like having a magic wand. But instead of turning pumpkins into carriages, it can make federal convictions disappear. Poof, gone. It's a tool meant for mercy, for correcting injustices. Sometimes, though, it makes you go, wait, what now? Especially when certain names pop up on the potential pardon list. Former President Donald Trump, now he had a particular flair for the pardon. His choices often sparked, shall we say, lively debate. Some were for people with compelling stories of rehabilitation. Others involved political allies, controversial figures, or folks connected to his inner circle. Remember Sheriff Joe Arpaio or Roger Stone? The point is, Trump's pardons weren't shy. They made headlines, they made people talk, and they definitely made some folks raise an eyebrow or two, or maybe even their whole face in disbelief. So buckle up, because we're about to dive into this whole fascinating and slightly bewildering situation. Alright, let's talk about the Chrisleys. Todd and Julie Chrisley. You might know them from their reality TV show Chrisley Knows Best. It was a show that painted a picture of a wealthy, Southern family. Lots of sassy one-liners from Todd. Lots of seemingly perfect family moments. They portrayed an image of opulence, of knowing how to live the good life. Fancy clothes, big houses, you know the drill. The show was popular. It ran for many seasons. People tuned in to see their extravagant lifestyle and their family dynamics. Their brand was all about being successful, about knowing best, as the title suggests. Todd Chrisley, the patriarch, was the star. He was quick-witted, always impeccably dressed, and seemed to have an opinion on everything. Julie, his wife, was often the calmer, more composed counterpart. Together, they built an image of a family that had it all figured out. But as we often find out, reality TV isn't always reality. Behind the scenes of their carefully curated television lives, a very different story was unfolding. So, what exactly did the Chrisleys do to land themselves in such hot water? We're not talking about forgetting to pay a parking ticket here. We're talking about a scheme that federal prosecutors said defrauded community banks in the Atlanta area out of approximately $36 million. $36 million. That's a lot of designer clothes even for Todd. The core of the prosecution's case was that Todd and Julie Chrisley orchestrated a sophisticated plan. They allegedly falsified documents, including bank statements and financial records, to make themselves look much wealthier than they actually were. Think about it. You want a loan? You show the bank you can pay it back. The Chrisleys, according to the government, took this to an extreme. They allegedly inflated their net worth, creating a fantasy financial picture to secure these massive loans. The scale of the fraud, $36 million, is staggering. When the federal government decides to prosecute, they usually come prepared. The trial of Todd and Julie Chrisley was a significant event, closely watched due to their celebrity status. It began, and the details that emerged were quite damning. Prosecutors laid out their case meticulously, presenting evidence of the falsified documents, the fraudulent loan applications, and the efforts to evade taxes. Witnesses, including former business partners and employees, testified against them. In June 2022, after weeks of testimony and deliberation, the jury delivered its verdict: guilty. Todd Chrisley was convicted of conspiracy to commit bank fraud, conspiracy to defraud the United States, and tax fraud. Julie Chrisley faced similar charges and was also found guilty of wire fraud and obstruction of justice. Section 5, Lockdown, the Chrisley swap mansions for prison cells. After the guilty verdicts in June 2022, the next big step was sentencing. This is where the judge decides the punishment, and for financial crimes of this magnitude, the penalties can be severe. In November 2022, Todd and Julie Chrisley learned their fate. Todd Chrisley was sentenced to a hefty 12 years in federal prison. Julie Chrisley received a sentence of 7 years in federal prison. They didn't go straight from the courtroom to a cell that day. There's usually a period before reporting to prison. But in January 2023, the reality of their situation truly set in. Todd Chrisley began serving his sentence at Federal Prison Camp Pensacola in Florida. Julie Chrisley was sent to Federal Medical Center Lexington in Kentucky. Their lives, once broadcast for entertainment, took a very different turn. From Chrisley Knows Best to Chrisley Knows Bars. Their children, particularly Savannah Chrisley, became very vocal about their parents' situation. She has taken on a prominent role in advocating for them, maintaining their innocence, and fighting for their release. The sentences reflected the severity of their crimes. Defrauding banks of $36 million and evading taxes isn't something the federal justice system takes lightly. Section 6. The appeal deal: twists, turns, and partial rejections. Conviction and sentencing are rarely the absolute end of the road in the American legal system, especially when you have the resources to keep fighting. The Chrisleys, true to form, decided to appeal their convictions and sentences. An appeal isn't a new trial. Instead, a higher court reviews the record of the original trial to see if any significant legal errors were made that might have affected the outcome. The appeals process can be lengthy and complex. For the Chrisleys, this process moved forward, and on June 21, 2024, the 11th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals issued its ruling. It was a mixed bag, but mostly not the news the Chrisleys were hoping for. The court upheld the convictions for both Todd and Julie Chrisley on most of the charges. However, there was a small glimmer of hope, at least for Todd. The appellate court did find an error related to his sentencing. Specifically, the trial judge had apparently miscalculated something regarding evidence for certain tax evasion years. As a result, Todd Chrisley's 12-year sentence was vacated, and his case was remanded, sent back to the lower court for resentencing on those specific counts. Section 7, a get-out-of-jail-free card. Trump weighs in again. Now fast forward to May 2025. The Chrisleys are still serving their time. Todd is awaiting resentencing. Julie is continuing her 7-year term. Their daughter Savannah has been a tireless advocate, using her platform to talk about her parents' case, prison conditions, and her belief in their innocence. And then, a familiar name enters the chat: Donald J. Trump. Reports surfaced around May 27, 2025, that the former president and potential future president indicated he is considering or even intends to pardon Todd and Julie Chrisley if he gets re-elected. For a family desperate to see their loved ones released, a presidential pardon is the ultimate lifeline. It bypasses the courts, it bypasses the appeals, it's a direct act of executive clemency. Section 8, Pardon Me, Implications and Public Reaction. If Donald Trump were to pardon Todd and Julie Chrisley, what would that actually mean? Well, for the Chrisleys it would mean freedom. A pardon can forgive the underlying crime, potentially restore civil rights, and most importantly in their case, cut short their prison sentences. It wouldn't erase the fact that they were convicted, but it would essentially nullify the punishment. Imagine the headlines, the reality TV comeback specials. It would be a dramatic turn of events to say the least, but the implications stretch far beyond just two individuals. A presidential pardon in a case like this, involving a $36 million fraud and tax evasion, would inevitably spark a massive public and legal debate. Many would see it as a gross misuse of power. They'd argue it undermines the hard work of prosecutors and the decisions of juries and judges. It could send a message that if you're famous enough, or perhaps politically connected enough, the rules don't apply to you in the same way. This could erode public trust in the fairness and impartiality of the justice system. People might ask, what's the point of lengthy investigations and trials if a pardon can just wipe it all away? The societal reaction would be intense. Talk shows would dissect it. Section 9. The weight of a pardon: justice, politics, and public trust. Ultimately, the power to pardon is a profound one, vested in the presidency to serve as a final check, a tool for mercy when the system might have erred, or when an individual has truly earned a second chance. But with great power comes great responsibility, right? That's what Spider-Man's uncle said, and he wasn't even president. When pardons are perceived to be driven by political expediency, personal loyalty, or a desire to benefit the already privileged, it can have a corrosive effect on public trust in the very institutions designed to uphold justice. It makes people wonder if the system is rigged. The Chrisley case, should a pardon materialize, would become another data point in this ongoing discussion. Are we okay with a system where reality TV stars convicted of multi-million-dollar fraud can potentially have their sentences wiped clean by a presidential decree? The justice system is supposed to be blind, treating everyone equally regardless of their fame, wealth, or connections. Pardons like the one being considered for the Chrisleys can make that ideal seem like a distant fantasy. The perception of a two-tiered justice system, one for the rich and famous and another for everyone else, is incredibly damaging. It breeds cynicism and resentment, and that's a heavy price to pay for any single act of clemency, no matter how well-intentioned it might seem to some.